If you're new here, then there's one thing you need to know about me. If you ask for something in the comments, then I do my very best to deliver. What's the Sony A7R Mark V like in low light? What's it like when dealing with fast-paced movement? What's the rolling shutter like? And with the Sony A7R Mark V being mainly a photography camera, what's the actual camera like with taking photos in what you could call a tricky environment? These are all questions that you keep asking down in the comment section below, so today I want to show you exactly that. A few days ago I was asked to go to a charity boxing event to do a little bit of photography and videography for one of the competitors. It's almost like the planets were aligned, eh? And you know what? Spoiler alert, I was actually blown away by the results. All the photos and footage that you see in this video from ringside is from the A7R Mark V paired up with the FE2470 f2.8 G Master version 1, not the version 2. All of the footage was shot at 4K S-Log3 XAVC-S, mainly at 25 frames a second, but I did throw a little bit of 50 FPS in there as well for good measure. So in terms of the photography, the ISO is fairly varied, all the way from around about 1250 all the way up to 6400 and even 8000 ISO. Unfortunately, the only real light source for the ring is directly above, and it wasn't exactly in the middle, so depending on whereabouts in the ring you were or around the edge of the ring, the lighting changed quite dramatically. And with the boxers wanting to throw punches left, right, centre, then the shutter speed was fairly quick on the camera, so sometimes you have to dial up that ISO that little bit more. Some of the photos have a little bit of noise reduction, which is done just inside Lightroom. No topaz has been used on any of these photos. But if I'm honest, I did add a little bit of grain in post. I know you may think, why take away the noise and then add grain, but it's just the vibe I wanted to go for with these photos. But regardless, the photos look really, really nice. Now, one of the biggest new features on the Sony A7R Mark V is the autofocus, because the autofocus works on an artificial intelligence system which allows the camera to actually track the eyes, which is nothing new, but also track the head and the body, even when the body is actually facing away from the camera. And from using this camera on the night, I have two words: absolutely solid. There were times when the camera would try and focus on something else in the ring, such as one of the ropes or something in the background, or a different person entirely, but for the most part, when you were actually tracking a boxer, it stayed on the boxer the whole time. Most likely when it was going off tracking the wrong thing, it's probably down to user error, because I was trying out the different focus modes. The ones I find more useful is the wide, but also the center. But for the most part, the camera was pretty much on the money for quite a lot of the night. Now, in terms of the video from the A7R Mark V, this is where it kind of speaks for itself. Now, the A7R line of cameras from Sony aren't designed to be video cameras. They're photography cameras with some elements of video features implemented into them. Anytime it's come to Sony mirrorless cameras, the A7S line, like the A7S Mark III, is the video camera to go for over the A7R. The A7S III performs really, really well in low light, whereas the A7R, you wouldn't actually expect it to perform that well in terms of low light. And when looking back at the footage, I'm not going to turn around and say that there's no noise whatsoever, because obviously there is. Some of these clips were shot at 1000 ISO, others at 6400 ISO. But one really nice feature about the A7R Mark V is similar to the A7 IV and the A7S III, and then it has a second base ISO over its standard base ISO. What I mean by that is, on the A7R Mark V, when you're filming in S-Log3, your standard base ISO is 800. And obviously as you turn up the ISO on the camera, then you add more noise to your image. When you get to around about 3200 ISO, that noise seems to disappear a little bit, and then you start almost like it would be when you were at 800 ISO. So something I've been doing with the A7R Mark V is when I'm shooting at, let's say, 2500 ISO, then what I do is actually go up to 3200 and then just turn down the aperture ever so slightly to counteract the increased ISO. By doing that, you get less noise, but the image is still the same exposure. With the A7R Mark V having a 61 megapixel sensor, you'd expect the sensor read off to be much slower than what it actually is. Now, once again, I'm not saying that there's no rolling shutter, because obviously there is, and maybe this isn't the best test to actually test the rolling shutter, because I'm not whipping the camera from left to right really fast, but I am having to track people moving around a ring fairly quick and catching their punches. But when it comes to using the A7R Mark V for this kind of filming, then I actually see no issue with it. Yes, there's a little bit of rolling shutter, but because I'm filming in 4K, then the sensor read off is a lot faster than what it would be if I were filming in 8K. Personally, I think the 8K on the A7R Mark V, unless you've got it actually on a tripod and you're not really moving it, I personally wouldn't really use it. It's good to be able to crop in and get that extra resolution, but the rolling shutter is atrocious. Now, a few things to note which I want to include into this video. If you're considering getting A7R Mark V, this may help you. All of the still images that you've seen in this video is actually shot at compressed RAW, which is 12-bit rather than 14-bit. I actually had my doubts when it came to using compressed RAW files. I've been doing some tests and I have a full video coming out about the lossless, compressed and uncompressed RAW files over the next couple of weeks. But I've got to say, when it came back to editing the images and looking at the final result, I'm pleasantly surprised by how it looks. I don't feel like shooting at compressed RAW 12-bit has actually limited me whatsoever, but perhaps these weren't the hardest images to actually capture. The reason I decided to go for compressed RAW over uncompressed RAW is because you only get about 933 images on a 128GB card when using uncompressed. And when you go to compressed, that goes to around about 1600. Also, everything that you've seen in this video, apart from obviously me talking right now, was filmed on a single battery. And with that single battery, I filled a full 128GB V90 card and a little bit more on a second memory card. Let me know what you think to the photos and video in terms of quality. Go easy on me, please, because I've never even watched a boxing match on TV, let alone been to one and then photographed one. If you have any more questions about the Sony A7Rv, let me know down in the comment section below. As you can see from this video, if you ask, I always try and deliver. If you want to see more content, make sure you subscribe and hit the bell for all your notifications. And if you do, I'll see you right there. Thank you very much for watching.